So today is gonna be another letter day. Just a piece of paper. Just one. So today the last one was G, A, B, C, D, E, F. The last one was F. So I'm recording. Today is G. So G has a few different options to it. You can make it a little bit more linear here. You can also opt to have it go out a bit. But I think for the sake of what I'm dealing with, easiest is going to be this one. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this little dude. It's going to pop up so that he's elongated this way. And then I'm going to have that move and then start to curve back around to create this shape kind of like this. But as soon as the head sort of starts to get to this position, it's going to then have this edge pop up and allow for this movement to come through. And then it'll sort of be pulled along for a moment. So you'll have a little bit of sort of that shape happening. And then it'll eventually stop here. And you'll end up with that sort of shape. And then I have to figure out. So this has the front end. It's up here. I need to figure out how to then take this shape and have it curve back. I could, most of the time what I've done is I've had the sort of general movement of everything resolve back in that direction, but it might be a different change of pace to have it reverse. And then sort of pop back to this position, a little bit altered of a something, and then just have it sort of pop down, spread out, pop back up for a second as it twisted to reorient, and then land back to the original position. So I think that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be up, then there, and you have this shape. You have that shape, and then it then reverses back to this shape, pop down, spread out, pop up and twist, and then land back down. Hello, Ritz. Let me see if anyone else said hello. I don't think anyone. Oh, hey, Brad. I got distracted doing that bit. So next stage is creating the basic G shape. Curious about this shirt. This is a shirt that I painted. I've had it for a bit, so it's got the start of some holes coming around on it. I can't print this large. Hello, Demonkoskrali. I can't print stuff this large. Are these like terribly off? These might be ones that I opted not to use because I punched holes in them not very well. Let's see what I got down here. I might have to take a moment to punch some holes into some stuff. Let's see what these are looking like. I punched the paper myself using just a standard 3-hole punch. But I just have piles of paper that I haven't really kept well organized, and sometimes I make mistakes, but I keep the paper with the intent of using it for other purposes. And so I forget that I sort of set it aside to make it better. So ideally this will end up sort of like around here. Stream, because otherwise wouldn't work as consistently. And right now there's a different sort of appeal for it and such. Really try to think about how to get a decent to get some curve or dimension to this. But I can't print shirts this large as easily because I'm printing on different sizes of shirts, and the screen to print at that scale has to be a decent size, and then you have to do it. It's a little bit harder to print this sort of scale. But this one's just painted using silkscreen ink. Just because I know that the ink that I have for that will do decently as far as staying on fabric. If anybody's looking to print onto their own t-shirt, I'd suggest getting a piece of cardboard or something rigid to put inside while you're working, because t-shirt fabric stretches a lot, so if you have it pulled in a little bit of a direction, you'll have a better experience with it. So conceivably, how do I want it? So it goes up. And do I want it to, I think it might be interesting to have it as it goes this way, twist out. So that, let me see what it looks like. And the lips come out here. Hello, Apoxia. Hello, Reno. and apioxcelery.exec. Thinking about doing some a little bit of circuitry stuff. I forget how I started into it, but I was looking at ISD 1280, like a couple bucks for a module that does pretty lo-fi voice recording, and building that out. This isn't an Asian brush of any kind. This is just one that I got in bulk online. This is just a round brush. You're asking what kind of brush this is. I think that this is likely actually manufactured in China, but it's just a round brush. Let's see. Twist in the outside, then it comes back on the inside. But it is Sumi ink, which is, I was looking up out of curiosity, like if it's Sumi E ink is sort of like a time that you say like non-bread or chai tea or something. The idea that like you say something that's a translation and then you clarify to some degree. Where I think Sumi is like a Japanese word for ink of some kind. So if you say Sumi ink, you're really saying ink ink. I think I might have to adjust the positioning on this. Or I could just leave it. Let's see what it looks like. ATM machine, or yeah, the ISD 1280 voice recorder, making a very, sorry, I'm going all over the place. Oh hey Valentine, hope you're doing well. So, what was it? ATM machine, I say DC current a lot, which is actually direct current if you're saying it that way. But and the other thing I was talking about, because Reno does some software engineering sort of stuff here and there, a mixture of some stuff. I was looking at making a like lo-fi one channel sampler, and the ISD 1280 voice recorder, pretty easy to work with. Like you can work with it pretty much just as is if you give a power supply to it, but then you can have breakout buttons, and I was gonna try and house it in something and have a more tactile experience with messing with that and doing some, it's pretty low fidelity, but and someone asked if I planned ahead on stuff. Some bits here and there, not everything all the time, but it's a mix. So I think I'm gonna like exaggerate this bit so I have a little bit more of a lead up. I did like a loose sketch of an idea. just general motions, and what I'm doing now is, in this case, I have a sort of a start and a midpoint. A start, mid, and end point. The start and end point are the same, and the midpoint is something that takes a little bit more specificity to it. Yeah, you can find the ISD 1280 online for like less than $5. Depends where you buy it. I was feeling guilty about using Amazon for source and stuff, so I had found a spot that is a smaller business to try and source it from. That was Tinkersphere, which they have a shop in Manhattan, but I ordered it online. But it seems like a space that I would enjoy going to in person, and that they'd have a good variety of stuff. I haven't done too much messing with using audio and electronics and things. But what was I thinking? Oh, so planning these out for these letters, because I'm doing a bunch of them and I want them to be kind of consistent. I have this base form sort of deal that just has the starting position, which is down here, this circle that you may or may not be able to see super well, and a height marker of how high up. And fill the middle group. That seems like it has your description of taking a CNC router and recording a sound and then convert it to a CNC program and mill that into a piece of wood. That seems like it's a variation on how vinyl records are stored. Fill the milled groove with black paint. Because it seems like what you're doing is you're taking the waveform of the audio and converting it and then etching it in a physical space. So that seems like you're doing something of like how records are stored. Oh, it stained all the wood. That's frustrating. So here's my G. Black epoxy might work better. I don't know. I haven't done too much. You can find people who deal with that sort of stuff a lot more. Hello, CHLO Draw. Hello, Yorglow. Hello, Mariana. So, I don't know if the person who was asking about the plan is still here, but I've got this loose sort of bit where I just decided I wanted to do this G shape, and then the movement. I sort of sketched out the general direction, but because this is all working on the same general shape, there's not as much of a need to... I'm just working off of this shape and then moving backwards and forwards from it, but using that as the sort of grid, the base pattern sort of deal. It's not as important for me to plan out the specifics if I have the general idea going. So now what I'm going to be doing is moving backwards. You want it to mail a QR code to a YouTube video playing in the engraved audio. There's so much information that exists that's like a matter of coding and decoding stuff. I was actually, before starting into things, I was like, I have enough time to watch this video, but ended up being like a minute or two late in starting today, but that's okay. I was watching something recommended to me on YouTube because I follow, I forget what his name is, like Technology Connections or something, but he just talks about how various technology works, and he recommended a video of a guy talking about the scale of CRT monitors or displays and why you don't have color viewfinders. Hello, Arteminiamus. I'm using OBS to create the stream, and then Yellow Duck to push the stream to Instagram. As it stands, things are okay for continuing to do that, but I'm guessing at some point Instagram might remove that capability. I don't know. But I was watching a guy talk about why CRT displays were never really implemented in small scale. It has to do with the fidelity of some of the manufacturing components when you're combining 3 electron guns into a production. And I kind of understood it, but you might enjoy some of the other stuff if you're an engineer or just like tech stuff. I think Technology Connections is the dude's name, or his username. I don't know his actual name. Hello, Mia's Tattoo. Watching that dude on YouTube was how I learned about, you talking about etching into wood made me think of RCA tried to develop, they had the idea, and it didn't end up working out, of using a record player to display images, but vinyl can't hold the fidelity necessary for a super high, the amount of information that's necessary to convey an image versus a sound is much different. So the amount of information and the fidelity of the frequency for storing and sharing an image wasn't possible on vinyl record, and would be probably also very difficult to achieve if you were trying to etch it into wood. And that sort of fidelity just made me think of watching someone try to 3D print a record of vinyl. Well, it wouldn't be vinyl at that point, but 3D print a record, and the fidelity on that was pretty low. It wasn't a great sounding thing, but it was possible. And that 3D printing has a ways to go as far as different manufacturing and such to get the fidelity, because it's pretty accurate, but it's not accurate to the degree that some mechanical actions can convey. It's a different process. Hello, Thomas. You don't have to apologize for your Wi-Fi. You might enjoy technology connections on YouTube. Thanks, Dylan. Congratulations on your promotion. I was going to say raise, which I'm guessing comes with the promotion, but that's not the full. Saying raise doesn't sound as impressive and isn't as accurate a statement as saying promotion when you get a promotion. I was trying to think of a way that G connects to your name, and it is in your last name, but it's not something that I think about as being like the defining thing of your name. And I was like, maybe middle name. I was like, nope, that's not your middle name. Your middle name doesn't start with a G. What would your middle name be with a G? Garth. I was listening to a podcast about Garth Brooks. Passively. What was it? Hit Parade? That's a podcast I like. Give me a podcast where someone gets super in depth into something that I don't have a general understanding about, and then they're like, here's the thought and reason behind this seemingly mundane thing, and I'll be happy about it. did not get to the point in the podcast where there was any discussion about Chris Gaines. I said that without even looking at your question. They probably get there. He's pretty thorough about it. But the podcast has talked a number of times about how the Billboard Top 100 shifted a bunch with different technological movements and how it became more accurate with time by actually being able to tell different ways of actual sales, because there was a long period of time in chart history where it was just reporting done by record stores and radio stations, but it was just their own records, like what they decided to say were the actual sales numbers and stuff. And so there was stuff like payola, or just inaccurate things because there didn't exist the ability to keep track of how those things were played, sold, and produced. I'm going to redo this one. So the actual number of plays and stuff like that were inaccurate for a long period of time because it was just a reflection of what people said, what different influences radio stations and record stores and stuff like that had. And so in those, for a period of time, it was just what people said, and there were a lot of inaccuracies. And then Billboard eventually started using a barcode technology in order to track some of that stuff, which meant that they would just have a barcode record when actual sales took place, and that really helped country western musicians as well as hip-hop artists, because it accurately conveyed what actual sales were as opposed to what record store owners and stuff like that, what other people were saying the sales were. And then it also shifted a lot with Billboard incorporating online plays and views. Which wasn't until 2013 or so. It was around when I graduated college that you started to actually have Billboard recognizing online plays to contribute to the Billboard charts. Not thinking super clear in all these bits. This also might mess a little bit. sure what you're apologizing for, but if you're saying, I can't read German, but if you're saying unkind things to Reno, that's not nice. I was just saying, I was just letting you know what was happening because I was talking about other stuff. Just trying to be helpful. Remember a while ago when you were like, sorry for doing whatever. It's like, as long as you're kind to the other folks, it doesn't bother me. You gotta be nice to folks. I'll still go back and forth with VHS things here and there, but it's been a moment or two since I've done any VHS work. I don't know the last VHS stuff I did. Hello, Heidi. Going back on that Technology Connections dude on YouTube, watched him talk about various instances of why and how VHS and Betamax competed. Now, I've never actually personally seen or used a Betamax player. Hello, Arteminiamus. Gotta be nice to folks. Reno was just saying what I'm doing. Yeah, it's interesting seeing the degradation of quality of different media storage because it starts to highlight how things are actually being stored and augmented and such. Sometimes I get kind of lost between drawings, but more if it's complex or there's more stuff happening. It's more likely to happen when there's like a lot of different variations or movements taking place. I've gotten better with time with dealing with those bits. And sometimes I'm more likely to have some instances where I might be a little bit lost or confused if I'm talking a bit more, which is no one's fault but mine, because that's like a self-implemented thing that I'm doing. Do I have any tips on developing this understanding of the animation process? Look at existing animation and see what you like, and then look at it frame by frame. Try to better understand the differences and changes that take place. Experiment, test things out, see what works and doesn't work. Practice. But yeah, what was probably most helpful for me without even knowing exactly was rotoscoping over existing footage. That's a good way to start to realize that animation doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of the time it's less intuitive what you're looking at frame by frame. Like what makes sense in your mind as far as like what the next frame should be doesn't necessarily reflect what conveys the movement that you want. A lot of movement distorts when you're looking at individual. If you take like video or something and you look at the individual stills from video or from film, you see a lot more distortion and chaos than you think you are, because what you're seeing is an average. You're not seeing one thing in a permanent state. You're seeing something sort of moving a little bit. And in that movement, there's some variation and some stuff that isn't what it feels like, but it is what it is. Hello, Saiful Iman. We're getting closer to the start, but I laid on this ink a little bit thick right there. Letting that dry for an extra sec or two. Okay. Lips in the bottom of the nose. Hello, Morav. Thanks, Nurinik. We're almost to what'll be frame number 1. Just do like 2 more and a half the distance here. Now let's just do a straight up copy of this guy. Hello, Zen Chi. Ten, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Not particularly into meditation as a practice sort of form. Not that I don't see value in it. It's just something that I've never personally really pursued. I think the closest I get is when I have trouble sleeping. I try to do like some breathing techniques, but I haven't had as much trouble falling asleep. In recent times, it's been more trouble getting myself to admit that I should go to sleep. But this has meditative qualities to it. Because you have to just sort of like pretty much be concentrated on this and not much of anything else. Which my mom always talks about when she talks about throwing pots, like actually making pottery using a potter's wheel. That it sort of forces you to just be concentrating on just that thing. Now I have to, I don't know if you've ever thrown a pot on a potter's wheel, but it takes a weird mixture of like force and delicate sort of stuff, because you have to, initially it takes force to center the clay, where you throw down the clay and get it to stick onto the wheel. And then from there you have to sort of lock in, and you put water on it so that it's a more lubricated sort of thing. Because you can, especially if you're using the wrong clay, you can hurt yourself. Because it can have rocks or stuff in it and can tear up your hands. You have to center the clay, so you have to plop it down. Let me pull up this, and it'll be off center, and you have to sort of lock into it, and your hands will wobble back and forth, and then eventually the pressure goes here and there, and then you have to do a sort of pilot hole of sorts, push down into the clay as center as you can, because it's very easy to get that off center, and then start to shape it slowly. And you have to have a lot of consistency and similar pressure, and you have to be focused on it in a different way. I've never used like a wood lathe or something, but I could imagine there's a similarity in some ways to it. It's a bit different because you aren't making direct contact. I can see saying that prayer is a form of meditation as well. You'd have some folks agree with you on that. Depends how you sort of approach anything and what it serves for your purpose. There's some forms of prayer that are probably a bit more meditative than others. You can have very loud, boisterous prayer. That's more a sense of communal experience. You can also have prayer that's much more meditative, where you're just more either like completely aware or not at all aware of your surroundings, or you focus in on some particular thing to find some bit of calmness. I don't know if you've ever used a like meditation or prayer bowl where you have a metal bowl. I don't know what the actual material is. Then you have some sort of like a wooden stick or something that's sort of polished, and you drag it around the edge, and the friction there creates vibrations that find a resonance, and it gets louder and can sort of fill a room with this harmonizing noise. And it's interesting if you've ever seen a prayer bowl like that has water in it, and how those frequencies create visual harmonies as well. You're drawn there as well. Exercise does a lot to help with anxiety. Exerting some energy, some force is good for that. I haven't been jogging in a while because my knee's been bothering me, but I used to do that, and it's the sort of thing where I always feel, Tibetan prayer bowl. That's what I'm thinking of. Hope your drawing's going well. She. I'm pretty sure I have a very strong American accent with anytime I try to say anything with a non-European language, and a bunch of European languages as well. I was going to say Western, but that's whatever. I am not great at anatomy, so hope that your practicing is going well. I'm saying it right, I just keep repeating it like it's going wrong. Okay, well, that's good to know. when I was in school, I was in art school. I did not have to take life drawing, which I don't know if I probably would have benefited from it as a thing, but I was glad that I didn't have to because I'm not great at rendering people. This is Sumi ink, S-U-M-I. It's Japanese ink. Then the brush is just like a basic round brush that's pretty small, a little Goyo. And the paper is tracing paper, which something that I'd suggest you like just test out for your own before in a small scale before you commit to a larger quantity of something like it. I'm glad you enjoy watching the drawing process. I wouldn't want you to watch if you didn't enjoy the process. Would I recommend going to art school? Depends on who you are, where you're at. There's a lot of variables. I learned a number of things from going to art school, and it gave me a structure and that sort of deal. It's expensive. There's a lot that you can learn just on your own that doesn't require a degree, and a lot of creative fields don't require a degree of any kind. But what you can get, depending on how you're approaching it and what you're doing, is you can get networking and experience like-minded people that are interested in similar things and create connections that you can use in your professional career as well for years after. Again, I wasn't the best at that. It's this sort of thing where it really depends on what you're pursuing, where you are financially, what school you're trying to get to. There's a lot of variables, but there's also like no shame in testing out the waters or taking a break or pursuing something else. There's also a whole lot of free materials that they aren't as appealing, and it's not as much fun or as interesting, and doesn't feel like you're participating in a shared thing in the same way if you pursue those free routes and stuff. I can't say yes or no for art school. I can say that I enjoyed my experience, mostly for the people that I was around rather than the educational experience itself. But that's the sort of thing that it shaped and changed who I was in ways that I'm probably just not very cognizant of. And if I were to look back and analyze, I'd see benefits and shortcomings that I didn't. And I'm not sure where I would be if I didn't pursue art school. A lot of having like a successful career in art is based on networking, but you can network in other ways that aren't so expensive. Depends on what you're pursuing and where you're going with stuff. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't answer earlier, but Tara, you asked how often that I live stream. I try to live stream daily at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which I'm not sure how familiar people are with that term internationally, but New York time. New York is the largest city that's on this in this time zone. But if you want to watch collections of previous streams, you can do so on YouTube. Doesn't have the same feeling or experience because you're not watching it as it's happening and you're not seeing the comments and the interactions there. But if you search TraceLoops on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of hours of me working on stuff. I do know that this Friday I won't be live streaming, so if you're thinking about that day, that's a day that I will not be. That's because I have an obligation at that time. When did I find my style? A bit in college and then a bit out of college. Towards the tail end is when I started focusing more in on sort of the sketchier elements of animation and the like. It was just sort of figuring out more of what I personally enjoy and appreciate, and then keeping focused on that and exploring it and sort of giving myself the permission to revisit things over and over and over and over and over again. Hello, Niklos. I'm not sure how to... I know that you've joined a number of times and said hello. Never actually figured out what I'm saying when I try to say hello to you. Hello. Aluskara. Valho. Hello, Grimalkin, Grimalkin 96. I know that people who were born in the mid-90s are full-grown adults and change, but it doesn't mean that I don't get tripped up thinking about people who were born at that time and then realizing that there's a number of people who interact with my stuff who were born after 9/11. I'm just assuming you were born in 96. Hello, Ritz. Hello, Deuce Filius. Hello, Tureen. Seth Rogen's into pottery? It seems like almost a jokey sort of thing because in almost every art class, there's some kid who tries to get away with making a pipe or a bong. And since he has a lot of stoner stuff, seems like the sort of thing he might have tried to do at some point in his life. Oh, you were born in 2002? Okay, well, you were born after 9/11. I don't know what the 96 is about. Also, don't feel obliged ever to tell me what year you were born in. I feel weird knowing that knowledge. You can find out a lot about folks based on very limited information. But, yeah. You're probably of legal voting age and such, depending on where you're at. But yeah, 12 years older than you. For me, like, the sense of time progressing sort of like stopped after college. Like, in my mind, it's like college, and then after that, it's just whatever happened. Even though it's been like over 7 years since I graduated. I don't like thinking about that. My mom is an art teacher, and almost every art class you have, you're going to have a kid who tries to make a bong or a pipe and be like, no, it's just a pot. It's just pottery. I think anyone born after 96, I think it's a different feeling because my little sister was born in 95. 87, you're my sister's age. But, so anyone younger than my little sister, I'm like, you're a very young person. Yeah, well, between the two of you, you get about, or no, not between the two of you, because you were born 7 years after. hello, aloha, bonjour, bonjour. Remember that you're French. That has to sound super weird if you're watching the YouTube afterwards. Well, ashtrays make sense for Seth Rogen as well, and the smoking bit. Ashtrays are like the jokey thing for making pottery, because like anything can be. An ashtray is just like a flat surface, but it's less of a joke as what it used to be, because smoking is not as prevalent, so it's not as necessarily welcome a gift as it once would have been. Bonjour, bonjour. I'll say bonjour because that's funny. Hello, Bob 20. Bonjour. I'm not practicing. I just thought it was funny seeing you write bonjour with the Z made me think about the differences in understood pronunciation and whether or not there's like a clear sounding difference between Z and J for people who speak French. What did I eat for lunch today? A turkey sandwich. Still got Thanksgiving leftovers. Also had some sweet, spicy chili Doritos. Had a number of turkey sandwiches recently. You had a taco for lunch. Haven't had a taco in a minute since I've been pretty much just staying at home. I've had some tacos and some okay ones that I've made, but I would get tacos a lot when I'd walk over to a studio space, because there's a couple different taco or taquerias that are between here and where the studio stuff is at. It also means I save money. The tacos I had to get were maybe a little bit pricier because they had a minimum number that you had to get. You had to get 4 tacos. And it would just be a different section. So they're not expensive when you think about it being 4 different tacos, but it's like $10. Or no, it's like $9. It ends up being about, or maybe it's 3, I forget. Anyway, it's not super expensive when you look at it individually, but you have to get a minimum. But I enjoy Mi Mariachi Tacos. It's a cash only spot. If you're vegetarian, not a good place because you can get like cheese. That's about it. There is a Chipotle around here. Relatively recent. Usually just get a bowl if I go to a Chipotle. Usually that's a spot I go to if I'm out and about. But I'll get just a burrito bowl or whatever you call it because you get more food for that same price. Nothing like, yeah, I don't know. There's probably not all that much Mexican food in France. There's a round white circle sometimes on the film. That means that it's buffering, which might have to do with the speed of, or how much the file size is, or the bit rate that I have for exporting. Sometimes it's a little bit iffy depending on your signal. But that means that it's buffering. That's how it goes for Instagram stuff. At times. You don't have to apologize. My setup sometimes results in more instances of buffering because I'm broadcasting at a higher bit rate than what Instagram would have natively if I were doing this directly from my phone. Also depends on how many people are watching. Sometimes there are issues there. Today is a letter G. That's a general G shape. And there's the sort of thing that it's going towards. Hello, Anise. And I feel like I've seen your username before and tried to respond, and you were like, that's not actually my name, but maybe I'm confusing you with someone else. But thanks for watching. Hello. I can To do a letter, it usually takes me about 3 hours start to finish. That's with talking, scanning, filling things in. It might be expedited if I did a slightly different workflow, but as things stand, usually takes about 3 hours. Thanks for participating and stuff. Or 6. Okay. Where's the first one? I might have gotten pulled up somewhere in the mix here. There it is. Nope. Did I number these wrong? I might have numbered these wrong. Let's see. 2, 5. Remember outlining 1. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 26, 27. Here we are. There we go. Okay, found it. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 23, 24, 25, 6, 7, 8, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 8. I guess I just accidentally grabbed the 138. 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Okay. Accidentally labeled that one. You asked if I sell posters. I sell some prints. Don't have posters outright. The cost of printing a decent quality poster and shipping it ends up being sort of comparable to like a better print if I find a print shop that can handle it. So I tend not to do as much in that realm, and if I'm doing standard sizes and such, I can try to work on printing a poster for you. Depends on what you're looking for and such, but don't have so much by means of posters available. I need to zoom out a bit. And double check that I am recording. I'm not sure what your really is in question of. That I don't sell posters or what. It's just I haven't taken the time to really invest in finding quality posters, printing stuff that I like. Thanks, Zenshi. Hope you have a good evening, because I think that you're someplace where it's a lot later. Hope your drawing stuff went well. I was good at math in high school. I'm still decent at it, but I don't use it in the same way. Use it sometimes, but yeah, like I did AP Calculus, albeit AB, but Adios, Nurnik. I forget a lot of math formulas and stuff from when I was younger. Hello. You're still there. That's cool. Artemaniums. Saying goodbye to some other folks because they were saying goodbye. Don't always catch when people are saying stuff. Sorry, Gracias. Ahora Sad that you love my work. There are printers that are open, depends on what sort of shop it is, stuff like that. Places that fulfill remotely. It's a mix. A lot of stuff that's open in the States that probably shouldn't be. Yeah, you can send me a mail about trying to figure out poster things. TraceLoops at traceloops.com. If you look at my website, traceloops.com/store, you can see a few prints that are there. But it's not a crazy number. But those are also probably a little bit pricier. But when it comes to shipping and handling and everything, you might end up with a higher. Well, you'd end up with an even higher price if it's being shipped to France. I like repairing things or repurposing things if I can. A lot of the time, the cost that goes into getting the necessary materials can be more expensive than buying a used version of the item that's still in working condition. But I do like, there's a lot of electronics where most of the repair is just a wire that's disconnected or something like that, which makes it so it's non-functioning. But like, there was someone who, when I was doing various electronic work, mostly like Arduino stuff with some interfacing options, when I was at my studio space in an open area, there was a woman who saw me working and asked, like, hey, can you maybe fix this camera? I see you're working with red and black wire. And I was like, maybe. And all that had happened in this like $500 camera was it had been a little bit mishandled, and one of the two wires connecting to the battery port, to the batteries, had disconnected, and so it makes it so there's no power going to any of the components and the camera stops working. I just soldered it back and fixed it. It worked fine after that. So a lot of the time, stuff that's broken, it's a connection that's bad, or the wires have worn thin, or like been bent too many times, and then they break within the insulation that they're held in, and people think, well, I guess it's just broken outright. But so much of the time, it's just a matter of reconnecting wires together, which is not the case for more complex electronics. Things that might have like a chip or something like that, it becomes a lot more difficult to repair things. I repaired a voltmeter a voltage meter thing that I had where I knew how to fix it because I had watched someone talk about using voltage meters, voltometer, and that if you are measuring resistance and you accidentally connect the two, or is it measuring current? I forget. When you're measuring something, if you connect the 2 points together, then the amount of, I think it's resistance, because it's just got a bunch of current running through. If you connect the two, then it throws up the current that's running through and it blows the fuse. And it stopped working, and then I just had to replace the fuse. Just open it up, switch out a thing that costs like less than a nickel. And then this thing that costs like $30 is working fine again. Or having a general understanding of how older electronics that have onboard storage have to have some sort of battery power. So there's usually like in older Nintendo games that are able to save on the cartridge itself. Pokemon, Link games, or Zelda games, ones that have to store some sort of memory to it. They have battery power. There's usually like a pretty low voltage battery that's installed, and eventually those die. They're not drawing a lot of current, but I recently was gifted a Game Boy Micro, and I found my old Pokemon game, but it's like, we can't do time-based events anymore on this because the battery died for running the internal clock. And so I have not replaced it, but I have replaced those sorts of batteries in other electronics, a small drum machine that I have, stuff like that. Repairing those and figuring it out, it's much easier when you can just search in Google, like, broken this, and they're like, usually when something's broken, it's just this pretty basic thing that's disconnected, or you got to replace this small component that costs like $1, if that. So those are, well, that is a nice feeling to repair those sorts of things. How did I find this style of art? Exploring animation, having certain restrictions, not having money for color printing, really enjoying solid black and white things and how they define space and stuff. How you simplify into more graphic components and you can create a more visceral connection. Bad capacitors. They age very fast with heat. I could see that. For fixing stuff that's like, I've tried doing some circuit bending at times, and a lot of like contemporary or newer musical toys, stuff like that, like little keyboards and stuff. Most of the electronics are held within like a IC chip, I think is what they're called, where it's just like a glob that you have absolutely no access to, so you can't change anything in there. But in some older ones, a lot of the things are accessible, and you just have like not on board, but you have resistors that are super easy to switch out with just a soldering iron, and that can change the pitch of stuff. If you put a potentiometer onto pitch control on the timer for how fast things are going through or adjusting into and that sort of thing. Like if you increase the resistance, then it slows the playback. And so if you take whatever onboard resistor they got, or not onboard, but you take the resistor and you replace it with a potentiometer that can adjust the speed or adjust the resistance, then you can get a higher and lower pitch of things. I don't have an example here at my house, but that's some circuit bending that I've done. And I've also ruined some small electronic toys by doing that same sort of thing. Bad capacitors. I forget what exact. A capacitor is like a very small battery-ish thing, right? A capacitor will store up a charge and then release it. But it can do it in very small amounts. Someone gave me like an old analog drum machine that I showed the internals to my friend who is a musician, and he was like, oh, those are good caps, like orange caps that were more robust, used in analog instruments, analog electronic instruments. I've seen some circuit bent Furbies. They get creepy because they start to take on some sense of like personality traits, and then when you change the playback and stuff like that, it gets weird. You might be interested. There's another YouTube guy that I spent some time watching on, Look Mum No Computer. He's mostly posting about DIY modular synths and stuff like that. But you talking about circuit bent Furbies, he has like a Furby organ that he made that I think got like a little bit more attention at some point in time. But I mostly was looking at his stuff when I was trying to make a pretty basic oscillator. And I was like, I don't have to buy any sort of chips. No microchips for me, because all the things that I were seeing were like, you should buy this timer chip. It costs like 10 cents. I was like, but I don't have it, so I want to see if I can build it some other way. Eventually, I did use a timer chip to make an Arduino Punk console, which is just like a noise maker that takes 2 timer chips. And it just is like an on-off. It creates a square wave because it's just on and off, and you're controlling the on and the off time. So you're making a small analog synth of sorts, but it's really a square wave oscillator. But the Look Mum No Computer dude had one where you like use 2 transistors or something to create a sawtooth wave, or not a sawtooth, a triangular wave. And he has a bunch of other stuff, but I just don't have all the components or as much of the comfort level of soldering the more complex circuits that dude is working with. They're not like crazy complex, but there's more happening with them, and it's something that I just haven't taken the time or effort to become more learned with. Those sorts of channels come by every now and again. I made an Arduino Punk console. What do you call it? A Baby 8 sequencer. People call it a Baby 8. You can just get like a basic sequencer chip that has 10 channels to it. And then you just make it so it resets after the 8th one, because in music stuff, 1/4 and 8 stuff tends to sound better and more natural. But it's just an Arduino Punk console that's connected to a bunch of those things. Hello, Sajal. That was a fun project, but it also took me much longer than I anticipated to get it set up and running. And I had to get some diode stuff to like have directional stuff. I've just followed existing diagrams of stuff and then made some small adjustments. But that has a very good physical feel to that object that I made. I put it inside a Snoopy piggy bank. Because kind of like a while ago, you were asking about the model head that houses the thermal printer. Hello, Taka. I'm not sure how to read your username. Trying to figure out interesting electronic housing that is rigid, hollow, and interesting. Piggy banks. You can get plastic piggy banks for moderate price. Using ceramic, it's a bit more difficult just because it's a more fragile material, and drilling into it is a little bit more chaotic. But I put that Baby 8 sequencer into a Snoopy piggy bank. And the Snoopy piggy bank worked well because he's on his dog bed or his dog house. And so there's flat surfaces. That's another issue with trying to shove electronics into piggy banks, is that most piggy banks have curved forms to them. Hello, Ambra. I think I've got a video buried somewhere of the Snoopy piggy bank. I can try and send you that. Because I was trying to be cautious about having enough wiggle room with the length of the wiring inside of it. I ended up not having enough room to put everything inside, so the actual 9-volt battery that powers it is stuck on the outside. I could try to readjust some stuff, but I also didn't consider the internal length of, there's potentiometers and switches for every tone in the sequence, and they shove in a little bit further than I anticipated. Also, pretty awkward to reach inside of a piggy bank to try and like hold on to all these small components and rotate the nuts to secure the potentiometers and the toggle switches in place. I don't have a video on this page, but I can send you one. But if you're at all curious about sort of how those are made up, if you search like Arduino Punk console, some stuff will pop up. Or if you do like Arduino Punk console baby 8 or Arduino Punk console sequencer, you should come up with some various things that people have done. Tech time. It is a G. I like talking about tech stuff here and there. Less about new tech and more about the nitty gritty of older tech. Because I have a better grasp on how those things sort of work. My plan is to have all the letters in sequence for a longer form animation. May or may not exist as some sort of font, but I would have to probably spend some time converting everything to vector-based stuff in order to create a font that's not giant. It would also have to exist on a pretty large. You have to use them pretty big. It's not a very legible alphabet. You have to sort of have a context to understand what you're looking at. If people want to try to use it to learn stuff, that's cool by me. I don't know if it's the best way. If this was a little bit more tied to how you actually like learn to write letters, it might be more advantageous. But because this is trying to maintain more interesting movement and variation to it, it's a little bit, it might mess with some kids as far as having an understanding of the best way to write a letter. Thank you, Zamina. Say her name is in reference to Breonna Taylor, a woman who was killed by police in her home in Louisville, Kentucky, seeking justice for her and others like her who have suffered violence at the hand of the state, specifically people of color, women of color, trans women, people who have suffered violence at the hand of police. Bringing justice for that. it's also a means of keeping that sort of memory going, but also conveying a sense of awareness and allyship, so that people who would be against that sort of thing know that I disagree with them, or against fighting for justice. And for those who are familiar and agree, hopefully feel more comfortable in this sort of space. And all sorts of small gestures can mean a lot to people who deal with the weight of institutions on day-to-day things. I did it when it was more in the public consciousness. The protests throughout the United States, which have continued, but not in the same awareness. Not with the same awareness. And just having a consistent reminder that there's still injustices, and whatever news cycle or awareness that you have related to those things don't mean that they subside. It's a personal reminder as well, and sort of forces me to be not confrontational but upfront with those sorts of beliefs, because it's very easy for a person like myself to have those thoughts or beliefs but not communicate them to a larger audience, and not want to have those, not difficult, but potentially cause friction between me and other folks. And since I don't have to face the direct consequences, it's very easy to just be like, I donated once and I don't have to continue to make a point of it or to share those sentiments, because once it falls out of the news cycle, there's not really any present consequence to me as a person in my life and experience. So by maintaining that small little bit there, it can be helpful to force me to be at least somewhat public about the sentiments that hopefully I can support, and not just have the thought that I should be, but have some degree of action on it in small ways, especially when I wasn't feeling particularly comfortable being in crowds for any sort of protest. So being at home in those situations. Thanks for following. Appreciate it. If you want to buy a pin, I still have a pin up in my web store where the proceeds of it go to the Louisville Community Bail Fund. I haven't donated a crazy amount, but little bits here and there. And someone purchased one not like within the last week or so, which reminded me to see stuff. There's a big influx of donations that happen at certain times when people are more cognizant or aware of things, which is good and it makes sense, but once things fall out of the public attention, those organizations can be limited in what they're receiving and such. Most consequence that I face from expressing a desire for criminal justice reform in the United States is maybe some people don't like me. That's about the extent of my consequence. And hopefully I'm able to be forward enough to have some folks maybe dislike me or disagree with me, but I'm never like in direct threat of things. And the death of Breonna Taylor hit home in a different way because I went to a decent amount of school. I lived when I was in middle and high school in Louisville, Kentucky. So seeing those spaces being sort of militarized or having police and Humvees and such, and helicopters and curfews and all of these odds and ends because people were upset that a woman was killed in her home and wanted police officers to face consequence for murdering someone. And the city goes into lockdown. Struck a different chord. Louisville isn't as present in people's minds, and it's not as present in media and such, where like seeing things of protests closer up this way, like in New York City, there's sort of an understanding that those spaces are familiar on a national and international scale because New York City is more present in media, but seeing areas of Louisville presented on the national news with those connotations of mass protests and some civil unrest felt a little bit closer and a little bit more real. Because in New York, on occasion, I've come across protests without realizing it. But that never took place in Louisville. You can buy some prints that I have on my website That's traceloops.com/store. Most of those don't go to, those are just me trying to make some money, but if you buy a pen, the most recent enamel pen, the cost is $12 for a pen, and those cost about $3 to make and about $3 to ship. And so I donate $6 of that purchase to the Louisville Community Bail Fund. Thank you, Earth 2 Nico. I don't typically sell stuff that I've painted, not because of any ideological reason, but just I haven't figured out how best to do it, and it's annoying to buy the materials for different sizes and scales of paper and stuff. I do have like 2 paintings in the background here, but it's also I don't know how best to price painting, stuff like that, so it's I'm also anxious when shipping original artwork. Because stuff can go wrong in the shipping process, and then I'm either out that painting or that money, and then the person can be disappointed. I haven't found a comfort level in that space, so I don't know how best to send out stuff like that. But you can see what is on my website, and if you are not based in the United States and you're interested in buying something, you can email me, traceloops@traceloops.com. And try to work something out that way. We're getting close to being done with filling in the solid bits in this. And then it comes to scanning time. Probably finish a little after 6 p.m. Nice sound. I think as it's getting colder and the heat is turned on, that the dry air, and also sometimes the heat brings about dust that's settled in the ventilation system. And it can make my nose be a little congested at times. Winter times. This is the last frame. Your question is, do you have some tip for create person? I'm not 100% sure what you're asking. If you're asking tips for creating stuff, putting in time and working on things is probably the best tip that I have. Where I find, let's see where this lines up. If this is in frame or not. That's actually right about here. Okay. If your question is like tips for creative people or how to be creative, probably similar stuff. Just be proactive. Give yourself permission to try things. Explore different processes and different things that might pique your interest. If you see something and you want to know how it works or how it was created, invest some time there. And it should be pretty rewarding, hopefully. If that's not answering your question, if you could try and phrase it a little bit different, or ask it again with maybe some slightly different wording, that would be helpful to me. But hopefully you got at least some sort of answer from me. Next stage is scanner, which I think the scanner is attached. Nope, I need to reattach this because, yep, okay. I was using a different thing before. Okay. And take one moment, I need a twister. Come on. Okay. Had this happen before. Let's just see if. All right. Well, I need to use a different computer. I have the one that I look at here. That's the old one. Just annoying. I'm gonna have to leave stuff. Didn't work to switch this over. Let's try a different port. Okay, let's try restarting. Might be a minute. I don't think it's broken. I think it's just acting up. Thank you for the compliment on work with the Fiona Apple stuff. I just can't, like, I'd have to stop streaming if I wanted to try and reset my other computer. And I had this happen once before, and I was able to just use this computer, but sometimes. And then once I restarted my regular computer, it was fine, but it would break my live stream if I were to. Okay, now we're back in business. Alright. There we go, and that's there. This is going to another location. Let's go within transfer scans and do a new folder. That's 11-30-2020 underscore alphabet bit G scans. Create that, throw that in there, and this is going to be named accordingly. 30-2020 underscore alphabet G scans. Okay, on power, 600 dpi. Let's do it. Thank you. An exercise in perspective. Compliment about the Fiona Apple video. I appreciate it. How long have I been working in animation? Actively, or more consistently, for about 8 years. You can put whatever emoji you want. Glad you like the work. I've seen Annihilation. Saw that in theaters. If you're talking about the movie. There's a series on Netflix that has the same title, and I am not familiar. It's an interesting movie. I can't help but feel like the alien at the end, it looks like older 3D renderings, which I think is intentional with it. But it makes me think of the video for Da Dip by Freak Nasty. Because there's an alien that has sort of similarly odd, or not an alien, maybe. There's a 3D rendering of a super reflective figure dancing. It's a good movie. It's sort of just generally unsettling at times. It goes back and forth on some timeline stuff. I don't know anybody who like outright dislikes it, but I know some people who very much like it. Oh, sorry. Well, it's not like too much of a plot point. The movie isn't like, it's plot heavy, but it also isn't. It's more just like different means of being sort of unsettling. And it's not the most linear narrative as far as understanding of things are concerned. Sorry for mentioning anything plot related. Almost done here. And I gotta transfer stuff. Excuse me. Here. Let's try to transfer. New airdrop. Pop up. What does? Alright, let's go. These are all here. Let's just drag them over. Alright. Open that bad boy up. Or I don't need to do it that way. Let's clear out of that. That running, that. Finder. New one going there. Downloads. Copy these over to the Live Designs folder. This, rename these. Start with one. should be good. Okay, let's see. Photoshop, files, scripts, load files into stack, browse, 1130, G-scans, start that going, and display caption on. Okay, now I don't need this running right now. Go sleep. So this guy over here. CGI monsters peaked with the abyss. I forget what the CGI monsters look like in the abyss. For hello, Giovanni. Do you have an idea of what you want the final animation to look like before you start, or is the intuitive once you start drawing frames? Depends on the animation, because these have a distinctive start and finish, and it's part of a series. I've been sketching out generally what the motions will look like. I can't see if that's a thing. But yeah, it should be right about there. So I like sketch out loose bits here, and then direction of stuff, just quick sketches on that end. This is 11-30-20. These can go away now. And this folder can be closed because it is the last day of November. Let me close this up, and then I can work on animating bits digitally. Okay, let's grab this. Create frame animation. Frames from layers. Reverse frames. 0.1. Why did it hop around that much? I'm going to need to adjust this. Okay. Let's lock this bad boy. Okay. I think this paper's a bit inconsistent. Okay. I'm actually going to do I'm gonna render these out. Wait, I messed up. Okay, I'm just gonna have to deal with it later. Alright, let's see how this goes size-wise. It's about here, here, and here. And how far down does it go? That. Curves on top. Darken it a bit. Get around 1080. Spreading that bit out. Put this down. Save it as an animated GIF. This. Turn this off. Skip and throw this image. And there it is. Let's see. Say thanks, various folks, and such. Drawn however you're drawn. So that's done. I gotta get some food in a minute, but in the meantime, I'm going to say if you got any questions, feel free to put them out. I'm gonna say my spiel and then eat a Twizzler. So, if you want to watch this as in full at a later point in time, or you want to watch any other live streams that I've done, you can go to YouTube and search for TraceLoops and it should pop up there. If you want to see this animation and the time lapse, I'll be posting that up on Instagram, my TraceLoops page, in a short amount of time, within an hour or so. If you want to buy any t-shirts or some other things, you can go to traceloops.com/store and make purchase of things similar to this. And if you live outside of the US, you can message me either here directly through Instagram, or you can email me at traceloops@traceloops.com. And if you prefer TikTok as a platform, I'll be posting this animation and time lapse there as well. Username there is TraceLoops. Plan on being back tomorrow, maybe moving on to the H. I might need to prep some tracing paper because some of the frames as I scanned them were a little bit shaky. Thanks for watching, Shane. And let's see. So you're subscribed. You don't know if it's someone watching, but if someone subscribed and you're watching, thanks for subscribing. If you have any other questions, I'll give you about a minute. So eat this Twizzler. Otherwise, I'll post up this live stream and the animations and such. Thank you, Artemaniamus. Seems like people aren't going for some questions. If I cut off and you do have questions, you can direct message me on Instagram. It's probably the easiest means, but you can also do a more long form by emailing me at traceloops@traceloops.com. I'm going to head out and do some editing with this footage and have some dinner. But thank you all for watching. Plan on being back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thanks, Jeert. Alright, I'm going to head up. Adios.